Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the editorial director at Business Facilities Magazine. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today, we will have a panel discussion on energy, where to get it, and how much do you need. This webinar is sponsored by the Greater Richmond Partnership in Virginia. And in this panel discussion today, you'll hear firsthand perspectives on large load capacity, infrastructure planning, timelines, and preparing for the next wave of advanced manufacturing demand. We're happy to have Jennifer Wakefield of the Greater Richmond Partnership with us, as well as our two panelists. Before we get started, I would like to cover some housekeeping items. We'll have a Q&A at the end of our panel discussion, so please look for the question box in your panel and submit your questions there. If you have any non-content related questions, please send those in as well, and someone on our team will answer you privately. So as I mentioned, I'm joined today by Jennifer Wakefield. She is the president and CEO of the Greater Richmond Partnership. We're pleased to have her here today. We're also joined by Robert Locke. He is senior vice president of electric distribution for Dominion Energy, Virginia, and Gina Slaunwhite. She is director of major accounts, commercial and industrial for the Columbia Gas of Virginia. As Senior Vice President of Electric Distribution, Rob is responsible for the construction, operations, and maintenance aspects of Dominion Energy's electric distribution system, supporting 2.7 million regulated customer accounts across Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. With the company since 1998, Rob has held several positions at Dominion Energy, assuming his current position in 2023. Gina, with 27 years of natural gas industry experience, is responsible for managing Columbia Gas of Virginia's commercial and industrial major accounts, directing the major accounts and economic development specialist teams, delivering service, coordination, and strong customer partnerships. She has deep expertise in natural gas distribution operations, customer facilities, and regulatory frameworks. So we're pleased to hear from our panel today, and of course, your questions. So Jennifer, first let's chat a little bit before we jump into the questions, if you wouldn't mind. We're glad to present this timely panel discussion with you and our partners on the discussion today about the facets of how industrial customers are evaluating potential locations with energies as a top line item. Energy has moved from a background consideration to a frontline determinant in corporate site selection. Electricity demand is certainly expected to rise steadily. One of the figures that I had was risen 2.1% annually over the past 5 years. And certainly expected to rise further. With data centers being a significant driver in recent years, we understand that. However, talking today about manufacturing operations, certainly those folks are having significant energy demand with concern. So we're looking forward to talking about that aspect today and how the companies can navigate the energy landscape and understand what their options are. So thanks everyone for joining us. And Jen, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you. Excited to be here. As you mentioned, this is a very timely topic. It has been the topic of conversation at many of the last several conferences that I've been to. And that is the first thing that we hear when we're talking with site location consultants is about energy availability. And then, one of the things that we're also hearing related to this, and I'm sure, may come up at some point, is there's also been, related to energy and specifically to data centers, there's been some public pushback in this area. But I personally have a 15-year-old at home who is never without his phone, his iPad, and his MacBook with, of course, the TV on. And so what that's doing is it's just driving up the demand. He also refuses to Google things now because he just immediately goes to ChatGPT. So I think that's just the wave of the future.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that. We'll dive right in now. Rob, Gina, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start with setting the stage. Advanced manufacturers are often assuming that energy constraints are becoming a barrier to growth in many U.S. markets. From your perspectives, Dominion Energy and Columbia Gas, can you share what the current reality looks like in the Richmond, Virginia region when it comes to available power, fuel diversity, and infrastructure readiness? What is it looking like today for these manufacturers?
Yeah, so I'll start. And again, thank you, Ian, for having me. Happy to be here and talk energy issues. So again, I work for the distribution company here at Dominion Energy Virginia. We serve 2.8 million customers. We have large customers, small customers, residential customers. We really have a great mix in the state of Virginia. When you look nationally and look at what's going on across the country, we're seeing things that we haven't seen. So I've been with the company 27 years in my career. We had, small load growth, and load growth was coming from, some data centers over the past 10, 15 years, but it was very minimal. We had things that started electrification of cars and things started to grow that load demand. But then you started also having efficiency of appliances and things like your heater in your house got much more efficient. So that was sort of taken off the top of some of those. In the past 5 years, things have changed dramatically. And again, this isn't a Virginia issue. This is a national issue, really. The demand is almost like a hockey stick of demand. It's going up. Instead of, 0.5%, 1%, 2%, you're talking 5, 6, 7% in some states. And Virginia is certainly one of those. When you look at this region, though, and you talk about the Richmond region, and I'll say we are open for business. The Richmond region, we have capacity, and we put capacity available for all of our customers, and certainly our residential industrial customers. Get a large chunk of that when we're talking about what's available. We have a very defined process for our large load customers. So I think of large load customer, you're talking data centers. We're one of the largest data center markets in the world. But with that, we have a very structured process for them. And we have a queue process. And it's a large load process that starts, and we have them lined out throughout the course of, multiple years to connect. So again, I'll just close it by saying, we're looking at over 20 gigawatts of new load demand over the next 5 years. But we've ensured that there's adequate capacity for continued residential, industrial, and commercial growth.
Thanks for that, Rob. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll join in. Columbia Gas Virginia is a part of a NiSource company, which we serve we're in 6 states. But here in Virginia, we have over 293 customers, and we cover about 65% of the state of Virginia. So as a local distribution company, Columbia Gas of Virginia sees a really strong alignment between our system capacity capabilities and projected industrial growth here in the Richmond region. So our system benefits from multiple interconnection points with interstate pipelines and an intrastate pipeline, which provides flexibility and reliability to support large industrial customers. So we work closely with those upstream partners and on future capacity solutions, including planned pipeline expansions and coordinating early with Dominion Energy and local governments and the Greater Richmond Partnership to ensure energy's considerations are incorporated well in advance of a final site decision. So in the Richmond region, energy availability is a collaborative effort.
Thank you. So if a site selector says, I've heard Virginia doesn't have enough power for large manufacturers, how do you respond? You just mentioned the readiness. You're obviously all aware of the situation. And so you do have readiness there. So how do you respond to dispel that myth or to bring those folks quickly up to speed, generally speaking, in terms of what the Richmond region can offer?
I would say that perception is often reality, but not always. And that is not the case here in the Richmond market. So whenever we're working on a project, our first call is to our energy partners to figure out how we can make things work, not if we can make things work. What I would also state is that, right now we're already serving, a ton of manufacturers with continuous high load operations, like those in advanced materials, food processing, and then large scale distribution facilities that depend on both electric and natural gas systems to work seamlessly together.
Yeah, now I can jump in here. And from the natural gas perspective, our focus is ensuring that customers have access to reliable, flexible fuel service to support their operations and growth. So Columbia Gas of Virginia continues to invest in and plan our system to meet our customer needs. So natural gas plays a critical role in supporting advanced manufacturing operations, both directly for process needs and in many cases as a dependable fuel source for on-site power generation or resiliency strategies. So our experience serving large manufacturers in the Richmond region demonstrates that with early collaboration and proper planning, natural gas is not a limiting factor to an industrial investment.
And I guess from the electric perspective, I couldn't agree more that getting involved early and working with the customer and understanding their needs. I mean, when you think about how our system is spread throughout the Commonwealth and particularly in this region, depending on what type of load is needed to be served at a certain location, that dictates the solutions. And we work very closely with customers to come up with what's the most economical and the best solution. It might involve power quality. There's a lot of factors that go into that to try and determine what is the right solution to meet that customer's needs. And we've been very, very successful. You know, even when we have this increased load demand on our system, we're doing a very good job of having that industrial customer come to us, say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's a time frame. What can you do? And we'll sit down with our engineers and we'll get with them and figure out, you know, what's the right solution. So anytime we can get a little bit of planning time in there, it's very, very helpful because generally your electrical solution is going to be a custom solution for that particular site.
So what's the best way to level set those expectations with a client? Talking about getting in there early, pulling in your partners. But when you're at that table with the client, what is the best way to level set those expectations and really keep them, you know, show them that from the get-go that there is a potential here?
Yeah, I'll continue maybe for a second. So there's various steps along the process of, you know, site selectors coming in. Groups like Greater Richmond Partnership are great at doing a lot of that initial screening, gathering information, talking about sites, locations, all those things. Once we get some of that information, sitting down and we'll work through an RFI, you know, with those individuals and talk through what their demands are, what type of power quality they need at that site for the type of manufacturing that they plan to do.
And the only thing I would add is that communication and being transparent about their needs and what it takes to accommodate those needs is really important.
And I would say just making sure that you're figuring out not what they ultimately need, but what they need at what time frame. And so figuring out what exactly the timeline is, what they need here versus here versus here versus here, because it's not unrealistic. It's just when will that happen?
Mm-hmm. Great point. So to that point, when a manufacturer comes in with a large load requirement and/or an aggressive timeline, how do you evaluate and deliver that capacity? Jen, you just mentioned, you know, over time, perhaps there's an increase in the demand. So could either of you kind of comment on what some strategies are there or the steps are?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. And Jen makes a great point. You may ultimately need 30 megawatts or 25 megawatts, but day one, you may only need 5 megawatts. There's a solution for that 5 megawatts that's very different than the 30. And we can accommodate and make sure that we're building our work plan around what that, you know, end use user is looking for.
Yes, and from the gas side, it's the same thing as Jennifer was saying and Rob saying that it's scalable. So when we have somebody come in, whether it's an existing manufacturer expanding their process load or a new manufacturer coming in, we closely evaluate very early on the different stages, the phases, when they need the gas, what is our available capacity on our existing system, what redundancy needs are there, what reinforcement to our system do we need to meet all the different stages of their process, and then be able to come up with a solution that can meet their needs in the time frame that they need it. And the goal is to ensure there's no redesigns, that we're building the infrastructure we need. So we only have to put pipe in the ground one time.
So in terms of, well, you touched a bit upon that right now, Gina, in terms of some questions to ask that process. Are there any, to kind of flip the tables on you a little bit, are there any best practices you would suggest to companies or their site selection teams in terms of additional questions to ask? As I said, you just kind of mentioned some areas, but some certain questions that you would suggest they ask to make sure they're fine.
Yes, from the gas perspective, things that are extremely important. So we, as the distribution company, can provide the best answers to the Greater Richmond Partnership to determine, like, is this manufacturer going to locate here? Is we need to know, like, the delivery pressure requirements, what their hourly gas loads are, because that is how we design infrastructure. And it continues to evolve. Our system changes frequently as we add new customers. So we really need to nail that down. So having that information up front, along with phasing and timelines, can help us produce results or information that can help that manufacturer make those key decisions to locate here in the Richmond region.
Thank you.
I'll add, and one thing when we look at load coming on the system, we've noticed over the past 5-7 years, power is certainly more important to everyone, and the technical depth of the companies that are looking to relocate here in the power space has gotten very deep, which is fantastic for us because, to what Gina was saying there, you really need, it used to be, hey, we need 5 megawatts. Well, do you need the 5 over 3 years? Is it day one? All those things. What does a winter peak look like versus a summer peak? What type of facilities are you running? We're getting that expertise is really helping us plan for that load the best way we can. Do you need 1 feed from Dominion Energy or 2 feeds for redundancy? And how are we going to map that out? So we work closely with the company that's ultimately going to be there, trying to really plan that out and understand their needs.
Thank you. So talking about natural gas and electric power complementing each other, which is why we've invited both of you here today, Gina and Rob. I do want to just dig quickly into how is natural gas complementing electric power for advanced manufacturing? How is it complementing, and what does that mean ultimately for the choices that companies have today?
Yeah, so from the natural gas side, it definitely complements electric power by giving advanced manufacturers reliability, flexibility, and optionality. Many customers rely on natural gas not only for energy, but as a direct input into their manufacturing process. It actually can be one of the ingredients, making a dependable service critical. So Columbia Gas of Virginia supports these high temperature applications, continuous operations, hybrid strategies such as combined heat and power, which can enhance resiliency and mitigate some operational risks for these manufacturers.
I can just add, we're a big customer in the natural gas space as well. We fuel our power plants, and when you look at our integrated resource plan, which now we go out multiple years and look at how are we going to satisfy the power demands in the future, natural gas is a huge component of that. It does give you that flexibility to turn something on and turn it off when you don't need it. So we're a big consumer of natural gas, and it's part of our plan, particularly in the near term, to meet some of these increased demands.
Thank you for that. So, Jen, I'm going to turn to you for a minute, talking about what concerns do manufacturers raise with the partnership most often about energy, and how does the reality compare? What are some questions you're getting, concerns? We've obviously touched on some of that, but what are some of those kind of ground level questions you're getting?
Just concerns and questions about redundancy and scalability, especially for those who are running continuous operations. So we've been very, fortunate that, we do have a lot who are in those spaces where they're running those continuous operations for, advanced materials. We've got DuPont, that's got Kevlar, Tyvek, and Nomex that's created right here. Mondelez is cranking out, 10,000 Oreos a minute at their facility. We've got the world's largest hummus production facility here with Sabra. And so, oftentimes what's been encouraging, for clients who've had some concerns is, once we've gotten them together and make those connections with Rob and Gina and their teams, is, how they can look at, who's already here and who's operating successfully, because we're not just talking about promises. We're talking about facts and backing that up with existing clients. And so, we are not a region or a community that says no. We are a region that says we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, and I can add, I think that our customers and potential customers, they value predictability, right? So natural gas is a predictable fuel source, and they want us to provide really clear milestones, defined responsibilities, single point of accountability for site evaluations and long-term operations. So it all goes hand in hand. It's a collaborative effort between all parties here, all of us.
Yeah, we've noticed also over time a manufacturer's power demands change with equipment that they put in, and they're upgrading and doing things. So there's various points that we're working closely and back and forth saying, hey, we're installing this new piece of equipment. How's it going to affect our power quality? So we'll have our engineers put monitoring devices on the feed there, and we'll really be looking from a technical standpoint as to, do we have to make any adjustments on our side of the fence to supply them, or can we make recommendations on their side that might affect the ultimate power quality to the machinery that they're running there. So we have some very sophisticated individuals on our team that can break down that technical discussion and really get in there and understand what does the customer need to get their manufacturing process working properly.
Thank you. So we talked about speed, right? Speed to market. It was just mentioned a minute ago. So let's talk about that a bit. We're talking about the way that your teams and work with these companies and these site selectors, and addressing their needs, meeting their needs. So let's talk about the speed to market and how you do help deliver that. It's critical. So how are Dominion Energy and Columbia Gas, as the electric utility and local distribution company, streamlining those site evaluations? I know we've talked about communication. That's obviously important. But how are you streamlining those evaluations, those studies, and those infrastructure extensions to move from speed to market for what these folks do need from day one?
Well, you said a critical point is speed, right? So speed comes from coordination, collaborations, and no shortcuts, which you've heard us already talk about how we have to coordinate and collaborate with one another. So, for Columbia Gas of Virginia, we do have a streamlined process in place for when RFIs come in, once we need to do engineering services, studies and routing and constructability assessments. And then we even coordinate directly with like Dominion Energy, maybe use collaborate on right-of-ways or easements, working closely with one another on that. And, it's just a parallel planning. So we understand the importance of getting a manufacturer up and running when they need it. Because we certainly don't want to be the delays of a company coming in and not being able to start producing their products. So it's critical for us to be aligning and planning within days of those initial inquiries and those RFIs.
I think Gina said that very well, and I'll echo those comments. I mean, we are right there aligned, same concept, same processes that we go through on our internal teams to make sure that we're providing what we need to provide when we need to provide it. I'll tell you, I was at a conference last week. When I say conference, it's our key accounts, so it's all of our big customers. From across the U.S., but that have a home here in Virginia, and the message was exactly this: it was speed to market. Power companies really have to get better at speed to market. A lot of that drive is coming from the big data center space. And we have a very defined process for data centers that's different from a manufacturer that comes in. A data center has, possibly 100 megawatts, or maybe even sometimes up to 300 megawatts that they're looking at. That's a very different process than somebody who needs 20 megawatts. And we have a process that can handle both, but they're very different processes. It was funny as you talk with some of our other customers that are out there. They're saying, we understand these data centers are big, and they are driving a lot of this load onto the system, and they're actually dwarfing, our size to you as a customer. But don't forget about us. And we really take that to heart. We want to make sure that we're serving every customer with the same level of service and making sure that we're getting them the product that they need when they need it.
Can I add one other thing? Because I was thinking about this with process efficiency. And one of the things that I know Columbia Gas of Virginia has done is to help with site readiness. And this is even before you have somebody inquiring or manufacturing coming in. And what we're trying to do is help the regional partners, the localities, understand what it is that they need to do, or what infrastructure, what natural gas infrastructure is needed to meet an industry segment maybe they're targeting at a particular site, and do some advanced engineering, get it more shovel ready. So when there is that customer or that manufacturer that comes in, we're ready to go. We might even have plans on the shelf at a 60% for a pipeline design. And that decreases the timeline for design and build and be in service for a customer.
Great point. Thank you. Thanks for that. So let's move to reliability and resilience. Obviously, availability is very important, and working with your customers and how they want to work with the utilities and the location they choose. Reliability and resilience is, of course, another big piece to that. So I did want to ask you, how are your companies approaching system resilience, redundancy, storm hardening? And why should manufacturers view Greater Richmond as a low-risk operating environment? So if you could talk about what your companies are doing first, that would be great.
Yeah, maybe I'll start there. So we've invested a ton in our grid, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of benefits of having large load customers in the state of Virginia as well. And I say that because we're making significant upgrades to systems that have been in place largely for 40, 50 years. So when we're touching those lines and upgrading them and putting in new towers and putting in new poles, wires, transformers, all those things benefit all of our customers from a resilience standpoint. When you can see some of the results of some of those programs, and we have several programs that are approved through our state corporation commission, and things like putting lines underground, in outage prone areas. And these are some of the main feeder lines that we harden, and then we put some of our tap lines underground. So why is that important, and why would that benefit a manufacturer? The answer is, if we don't have to respond to those outages across our system, we can focus on making sure that if an area gets hit really hard in a storm, we can put all the resources there and we can quickly get them. Just an example, this past winter, we had a really rough winter. It was extremely cold, and we had a couple ice storms. Those ice storms are just they can really be a problem on your system because you generally take a lot of outages when branches are hanging down. We had about 140,000 of our overall customers out at one period of time. And generally, if you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, that would have been about a 3-day storm to restore all those customers. This time it was about 24 hours. And a lot of that was because of those resilience measures we put in place over the past several years, but also we had the crews available that could go where there were problems right away. And they weren't spending time on, one line with 5 crews taking 3 days to totally rebuild, a line.
Yes, and with natural gas pipelines being underground, there's less opportunity for interruptions of service. We can generally make it through a hurricane, flooding as a result of that. So our manufacturers really depend on that to be to add to their resiliency plans for those manufacturers, knowing that that gas will likely be there at all times. And we too have programs in place that offer or that we do replacement of infrastructure, aging infrastructure, to ensure that reliability for our customers, to ensure that aging pipe is replaced so that we are removing that opportunity for a disruption in service.
And I would just touch on our low natural disaster risk. I would say that, we oftentimes point to, there's a reason why so many data centers are clustered in Virginia. And there's a reason why Richmond in particular is a low natural disaster risk index. And so we do often point to that FEMA index on a regular basis saying, hey, don't take it from us, go look at it, right? The reality is that we are not impacted to the extent of many of our competitor communities are. Because, even any kind of a short interruption, is costly, especially for those who have continuous operations going on.
Okay, thank you everyone for addressing that. So looking ahead as well, we're talking about obviously the increases in energy demand, which is broad and ongoing across the country and the world. So let's talk about planning for the next wave, what you all are doing at Dominion Energy and Columbus Gas. What investments are you already making that you might want to mention, or are you planning to ensure that the Richmond region and your service areas can support the next generation, or I guess the current generation that's moving, very quickly to be the next generation? What could you just kind of mention, maybe an improvement or two that you're all working on?
Yeah, so when you step back for a second and think about the mission, our mission here at Dominion Energy is providing reliable power. That's what we just talked about, the reliability side, affordable and increasingly clean. And we do that, and with all those factors in mind, to try and make sure that we're planning out. And an investment decision in the utility space is not a 2, 3, 4, 5-year investment. Those investment decisions are 30, 40, 50-year decisions. So we're very methodical about making sure that we're assessing the long-term focus on which assets do we need to build, particularly from a power generation standpoint. One other aspect where we spend a lot of time, and because we have this large load customers throughout the state of Virginia. Now, I want you to understand that the grid in the Richmond area is connected to the grid in Northern Virginia, which is connected to other states' grids in the PJM network. So it's all an interconnected system. So weaknesses in any points of that can cause problems to you. So you create a lot of redundancy. But when we're projecting what load demands we're going to have in the future, and we're looking out all the way up to 20 years now, and putting our integrated resource plan together, we're looking at what are the solutions available, what's the technology for all the different pieces to be able to fill that gap. So is it battery technology? Is it natural gas burning? Is it nuclear, new nuclear? What's the timeline on that? So we build all that into these integrated resource plans that we put out make them public. They go through a process with our state corporation commission, and we get a lot of input from customers along the way to make sure that we're building the things that are needed over, again, that 30, 40, 50-year period to make sure that we're satisfying our customers' needs.
Yeah, and
Thank
from
you.
the natural gas side, we definitely look at planning with communities where there's going to be growth. How can we get the infrastructure there? Again, I already mentioned that pre-planning of engineering work to understand what's coming or what that locality, what the region, the Richmond region is looking for, and how can we get that infrastructure there? What do we need to do a pressure increase to a system so we can get more throughput, more gas to get to the other side to an unserved area? So we do all of that system modeling and planning, and additionally, we work with the upstream. We talked about at the very beginning, interstate pipelines or interstate pipelines and projects that they may have going on to expand. So therefore, we can expand and provide more gas flow to that large manufacturer end user or that community in the Richmond region.
Okay, thank you. So staying on that point in terms of planning for the future, planning the next wave, I want to drill a little bit into sustainability and planning or continuing your clean energy goals to meet the needs of your customers, or the desires of your customers, I should say. Many manufacturers want clean energy solutions, have been pursuing them for years, depending on the company, of course. Some are new to it, some have been doing it for more than a decade or so. But we see companies wearing that sustainability goals may be limited by the supply in a location. So from your perspectives, can you talk about how in Virginia, we're balancing aggressive clean energy objectives with the need for the abundant, reliable power? How is that clean energy fitting into the goals that you're seeing companies want?
On the electric side, so we're a company that, and we've been saying this now for multiple years, we're a company with an all of the above approach. We need every solution out there to work in our favor, and we're actually doing a lot with those. So one example, you look offshore wind in the U.S. We're going to have a offshore wind. It's already providing power on our system. 5 years ago, people said we're never going to be able to make that happen. We right now have a bunch of turbines out there that are putting power onto the system for us. Why is that important? Offshore wind, when it's really cold, and there's certain times at night when the wind blows a lot, 24 to 30 miles offshore of Virginia Beach. That is super important because you have other resources like solar that are collecting during the day. So it's a really good natural hedge for those. But then also you look at, we have such a demand, there's going to be a long period of time where we're utilizing gas assets. Gas assets gives you so much flexibility to be able to ramp up and down when you need them. The technology has improved significantly over time, where it's clean burning. There's a lot of really good things going on in the natural gas space as well. And then nuclear, long-term nuclear. We're moving ahead with plans around this new small modular nuclear reactors. We have a site or two already picked out. We have plans to work with. We've done RFPs. We're trying to pick the right technology. I think some information will be coming out about that in the not too distant future. So again, it's all the above. Battery storage is becoming more important. Again, when you have loads that are created during sunshine hours and then loads that are created during off time hours, those batteries help you bridge times in between and times when neither are producing. So there's some really good things. And again, all the above, I really believe is the right answer for the state of Virginia.
Thank you.
And for Columbia Gas, we absolutely support our customers' sustainability goals, and also while maintaining our reliability. But we like to support energy efficiency utilizing equipment that's more efficient and ways to reduce their overall gas consumption. We look at renewable natural gas projects where a wastewater treatment plant or a landfill wants to take that biogas and inject that renewable natural gas into our distribution system. We also, there's the certified natural gas, which part of our supply for our customers is certified natural gas. And for those who may not know, what that is it's like conventionally produced geologic natural gas, but it's independently verified for responsible operations and methane emissions management. So therefore, it's reducing less methane emissions when it's being produced, and encouraging that, and encouraging our customers who, these large manufacturers, they actually go out and buy their own natural gas, and we just move it on our system, encouraging them to look at the certified natural gas as well.
Thank you. So let's talk about collaboration a little bit. We've talked about in the beginning, and that's par for the course, certainly with site selection and definitely with energy these days. So I wanted to kind of circle back to that quickly. Jennifer, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about, from your work at the partnership, how is collaboration among Dominion Energy, Columbia Gas, and your other local partners? How does that reduce the risk for manufacturers during their expansion or reinvestment? How does that play out?
It plays out in that, honestly, like clients can just have one single point of contact and we're all aligned together. So, the state of Virginia, VEDP is literally right across. I could reach out and touch them almost, right? Rob is on the other side of me. Gina is not far away, right? We are connected at the hip with our state and our local partners and our utility partners. And so collaboration, I think, is one of our strongest competitive advantages. And so they're not navigating any silos. We're all working as a coordinated team. So there's a few examples of that. There's been in the past where we've helped unlock a site that lacked transmission access by coordinating easements and infrastructure and extensions. And this is everyone working all together without, disrupting any existing operations. And then, previously we worked on a Lego manufacturing facility, the only one in the US. They came to us with a net zero requirement for a facility, for $1.5 billion facility that, wasn't a constraint. We had a very competitive multi-state process, but our energy partners really came through and helped turn that requirement into a winning advantage for our region. So I think, at the end of the day, it really comes down to manufacturers are not choosing regions based on promises. They're choosing based on past performance. And our energy story is proven by the companies that are already operating here.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. We do have some time for some questions, so I do want to be able to get to those questions. Thank you all for your comments, and we'll jump into the Q&A now, and I will direct it to all three of you and whoever would like to address these. We do have a few questions on infrastructure, so we can maybe focus on that for a minute. The question is from the audience: how do you plan for the specific infrastructure needed to serve new large power users? And when do you start that process? I suppose that means at what juncture of the project, or perhaps how long that might take. But as I said, the question: how do you plan for the specific infrastructure needed to serve new large power users? And when do you start that process? Would anyone like to take that?
Yeah, I could start. So I'll start large power user, large user. It depends on the megawatts. But generally what we'll do is we'll start with a load letter. So the customer will come to us, or as part of the RFI process, they'll sort of lay out, here's what we think we're going to need. And this is early on. This is, years before they plan to build it. Sometimes it's within a shorter period of time because they picked a site, they want to move in, and we're ready to go. So we'll go through that, look at the load letter. After that, if it does turn out it's a big user, 100 megawatt type of data center, we'll put them through a contracting process. So it's 3 stages. There's the engineering letter of authorization. Then you get a couple years down the line and it's a construction letter of authorization. Then it gets to be an electric service agreement. So we're working through that. As we're going through those stages, we're ordering equipment along the way, and there's a lot of steps that are happening. Our engineering teams are meeting with the customer, trying to understand site plans, access, right of ways. So we're going through all those steps. We have a whole team that's focused on right of way acquisition if we need to build lines to those sites. So all those things start to happen, when we're certain that, yeah, you're coming onto the system and we're going to be serving need, and we have a location. The end user has to have site control. That's one of the big things we look for: site control, making sure that they own the property and we're not doing a lot of work before, somebody might be just out there prospecting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, we can move on to the next question. This is a little bit related to what you had just talked about, Rob, in terms of getting infrastructure in place. The question is, how do you handle sites outside existing service territory or requiring significant infrastructure extension? That might build on what you just talked about, Rob, but if there is a site outside your existing service territory, Gina or Rob, how is that handled with the client, with the company, I should say?
Gina, do you want to hit that one? I can jump in.
Well, I would just say from the gas perspective, in the state of Virginia, we do have franchise certificated service territories. So we can only operate in those certificated areas. So outside of that, it would be it could be another local distribution company that serves them.
And
thank you.
We are very similar. We have an area that is considered our distribution service territories. We also have our transmission system within Dominion Energy, and they serve co-ops and others that might be outside of the distribution. So I'm a customer of Dominion Energy's transmission system, as is local co-op XYZ. So that co-op would contact our interconnect team over on the transmission side to say, hey, we got a request from a customer to build, just outside of the Richmond area. And that's how that process would work.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So we'll move on to a different question here, and this is the question. Transformer and gas turbine availability is a systemic drag on efforts to scale generation, reinforce reliability, and meet emerging energy demands, even before regulatory grid and materials pressures are factored in. How are you dealing with these industry supply chain bottlenecks that are affecting all of us nationally? Would anyone like to take that?
Yeah, we've been dealing with that now for multiple years. We have a process. One, we're trying to get a deeper supply chain. Two, we're trying to bring that supply chain to the U.S. where we can, of manufacturing of transformers or turbine parts, whatever it is. We'd like to get as many of those here, and we're trying to have some of our other big suppliers that are doing some work in the energy space to maybe decide to start building some other products. So there's a lot of different angles that we're trying to hit to deepen that supply chain base. The other thing I'll say is we spend a lot of time and put a number of requests into the queue system. So right now we have a number of queue positions for transformers, big transformers that may take 3 years to build. So we have things that we've already put in place with our manufacturers that we have contractual commitments with that help us be able to get that supply for a long-term period.
Okay, thank you. So talking about incentives to move along these projects, are there incentive programs? I'm sure there are, but if you could talk about a little bit about some incentive programs that you all offer, whether it's rate discounts, infrastructure cost sharing, or demand response credits available to the larger manufacturers, and I guess how would you define that? But could you just kind of give a quick look at some of the incentives that are available that companies are taking advantage of or that may want to take advantage of?
I can start and then let you jump in, Rob. For Columbia Gas of Virginia, we do more of that cost sharing infrastructure cost sharing. So if there's a new manufacturer coming to the state, we take a look at what's the cost of the infrastructure going to be, what is their natural gas usage going to be, and then we look at what rate schedule they'll be on over a certain period of time, and then we will weigh those against each other to come up with a net present value, and that will determine whether or not there's any cost to that new manufacturer for that infrastructure, or if they will need to contribute a little bit of some money towards an aid to construction or kayak.
Good. And we have economic development rate structures specifically designed for new and expanding industrial customers. We also have demand response programs that can help with, bill management, bill credits, other things like that. So there's a number of programs out there. Again, by talking to us early, we have a key accounts team that can be assigned to that industrial provider, and they will go through and try and find what is the best approach for you to take advantage of the available options in whether it's rate structure or demand response or whatever it might be.
Okay. Thank you for that. In terms of cost pass-throughs on infrastructure upgrades, just talked a little bit about that. How protected are manufacturers from cost pass-throughs on infrastructure upgrades to serve their facility? I know that comes up sometimes. Can you address that, either one of you?
Yeah, I'll say it really depends. And I don't mean that to be too broad, but it really depends the size of the project, how the investment's structured, what the benefit is for a utility investment versus a customer charge. When we get in there and we look at it, and if we can take advantage of feeding a customer off of another line that's going to benefit other customers, that can be shared with other customers. I mean, it's sort of, a common sense thing. If we're building infrastructure specifically for one customer, those charges are, according to that. So we try and work to make sure that we take advantage of, if we can build one substation that'll serve an industrial customer, but also can hit a neighborhood in two other areas, we're going to certainly do that to take advantage of the spend associated with those big assets.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for answering that.
I'm muted. Oh, sorry. The same principle applies on the gas side. There will be no manufacturer that reaches the construction phase without a full understanding of cost and responsibility matrix. We make sure we communicate that up front once we actually have a cost. If there's any cost sharing opportunities for other projects, just as Rob said, like looking down there's like it's a whole new community. There's going to be multiple new gas users. We look at all of that, and that all comes into play.
Thank you. So I wanted to jump on a question about a specific, if a specific mid-sized manufacturer. And the question is, Jennifer, you had mentioned Lego, their significant investment into the Richmond area, and some of the net zero energy requirements they have, and we know that's ongoing. So the question is, for a mid-sized manufacturer with say, $200 million investment, how replicable is that net zero solution that was put into place for Lego? Obviously, maybe a 1.5 billion investment isn't on the table for a manufacturer, but if they still have those same clean energy goals or net zero specifically, how might that work out, or what might they go through with that?
The answer is that the specific solution for Lego was shaped by, the scale of the size. So not so much just the 1.5 billion, but the size of the facility and what all they were looking to do, their procurement capabilities and their timelines. But the approach that they took as far as designing their energy strategy into the facility from day one, rather than trying to retrofit it, is absolutely replicable at a smaller scale. What changes is, of course, the types of tools that are available. So, a manufacturer that's looking to build a $200 million facility may not be able to anchor, a dedicated renewable energy project, but they could access, potential other programs, renewable energy certificates, on-site generation options that would advance any of their ESG commitments that they have.
I'll
Great.
build
Thank
on that. Lego's an amazing customer. They are very into sustainability, and they do some amazing things. So we spend a lot of time with them up front, and even during the project after it's halfway built, talking about different options, tariff options, but also solar. They wanted to put solar on their campus, so we had an avenue that we were able to help get solar built there. We have different options for different customers based on, what they might be looking to do.
Okay. We have time for one last question, and I will bring this one up. And if any of your questions out in the audience, if they were not answered, they can be answered offline by one of our panelists. So please be aware of that. We didn't have time to get to all the questions. So this question is, how do you ensure that manufacturers aren't deprioritized behind data center demand? We know, data centers are very big development, especially in Virginia. So the question was, how do you ensure manufacturing projects aren't deprioritized behind data center demand in your interconnection queue? Can you talk about kind of how you're managing those demands as they do come online and balancing that?
Yeah, and it's a very fair question. And there's a lot of the headlines are written around the data centers, and there's a lot of talk about, wow, these massive loads are coming. I mentioned earlier we have a very structured process for those very large load customers, particularly every data center runs through that process. And at the same time, the pressures there are different. The timing's different. There's a queue process. There's an interconnect process through PJM. There's a lot of things that go into that one that doesn't apply to a manufacturer, that's relocating in a certain area. And just understand, we evaluate each project on its own merits, geography, where it is, if it's in the Richmond general region. I mean, there's certain advantages to being in certain parts of the service territory based on capacity availability and land availability, our infrastructure that we have, our transmission system, all those things come into play. So every project is really very different, but understand that, I mentioned before, we're open for business in this area, and we're very happy to accommodate any projects you want to put in front of us.
And I would say we love data centers, but we love manufacturers as well. And so, as Rob was alluding to, like, it really just comes down to timeline and getting in the queue, right? And so, the earlier, the better. The more advanced intel, that we have, the better. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. Gina, Rob, and Jennifer, thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners.
Thank you.
And thank you to the Greater Richmond Partnership for sponsoring this webinar today. And of course, to our audience for listening in and for your attention. A recording of today's conversation will be made available via an emailed archive. We will email you the recording, but it will also be available on businessfacilities.com, but also on the Greater Richmond Partnership website, as well as to learn more about the region. You can go to grpva.com. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye, everyone.